last week we had a big demo from Jean-Thierry about clusters. Super interesting. We had a topic, but we didn't have time to talk about the topic. Oh, we did. Maybe a little, but not enough because we don't know anything about it.
We didn't talk about it, but we can remove that.
I will keep it. And today, that's why I will keep it, because today I look at new page. We have demos today.
I have a demo, yes.
Like, is it about Elsa?
No, multi-factor authentication.
Ooh. Do we have a demo from Sipka today?
Do you want to get? Do you guys want to do a little demo on Elsa? I mean, what's a little demo? I am happy to.
Like 10 minutes is little.
I can show some stuff in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
He's here to talk about the possibly converting the workflow to Elsa.
Oh, we can talk about it also. Elsa plus topics, questions. Anything? Okay. So first status, Orchard 1, not much. Let's see. Yeah, today. So apparently, Benedict found an issue and is working on that. So he merged one next into dev, or is trying to, and he's working on migrating from TeamCity to GitHub Actions for the build. TeamCity, which hasn't worked in 5 years, actually. And so he's trying to use GitHub Actions, which will be much faster, will work better, easier to maintain. I keep receiving TeamCity emails whenever there is a commit on the repository saying that the build failed. So I should be able to retrieve the URL. As a reminder, when we were working on Authentication 1, there was no GitHub Actions, there was no Trade ACI. TeamCity, there was no Abeyor, so TeamCity was the only open source solution to build an open source project. Orchard Core, where are we today? So, update Microsoft.Identity.Web, StringExtensions show test. Ooh. String extension unit tests. Usually we add unit tests when we find an issue or we wonder how it works, but unit tests are always good. Update AWS, update docs, new contributors, fix notifier cookie path. I want to look at the issue that it's fixing because that is risky. Risky because security and because you have to understand what you're doing here. Key options. So first, okay. Orchard Core. Which issue? Doesn't say. 13.6.54. This one, describe the bug. Lots of sites. Okay. Tenant prefix as a cookie path. Notifier. Okay, it's just one notifier. Oh, this is for the, okay. Okay, for default tenant. Okay, so it's using the prefix. Okay, that's fine. If you're just having a prefix because the container has a prefix, yes. Okay. Approved by naturally and Sean. So tenant 5, yeah. Okay, interest. What is the name? Remember. Serilog update, this update, stocks, snippets, snippets back. Refactor the migration code for the Lucene module. Okay, so simplifying the thing here. It's refactor. Okay. Right now, just to see if there was a bug or if it's really just refactoring. Okay. There was a bug. And I'm gonna put it. Okay. Awesome. Thanks everyone. Authentication.Web 2.11. Then demo time. Mike, you are first. You are first.
All right, let me share my screen. I think that's the screen that I should be sharing. Haven't did a demo in a bit, so I forgot how it works. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
All right, awesome. So I added on the user, so there's no new feature. So there added a settings to allow us to enable two-factor authentication. So to see how it all works, under the settings, there is a user settings. So I added to the same screen here. At the bottom, you'll see two-factor authentication. There's a bunch of settings that you can mess with. So you can enable two-factor authentication for everyone. You can enable two-factor authentication for admins only. This allows you to remember the client, so you don't have to keep typing the PIN every single time on the same computer. This right here allows you to display the email address on the authentication app. Otherwise, we will show your username. And this option, it's not complete yet, but it allows you to force authentication. So if you log in and you don't have two-factor authentication enabled, it'll force you to enable it. Here you can control the length of the token that the app will generate, whether it's 6 or 8. And this is the length of the codes that will be generated to regain access to the account in case you don't have access to your phone. So just for now, let's go ahead and enable two-factor authentication. and then you will notice that here I'll have a new option. It's called two-factor authentication. So if I click here, I can set up my authenticator or I can reset it. So in this case, let me set it up. And I'm going to pull up my phone. And as you can see, there's a QR code here. I open up the authenticator on my phone and I'm going to scan that. Let me just do that real quick. So now I have added this app to my phone, and then I need to provide the
can I do
code.
it? Can I use my phone?
Oh, yes, but then you would lock me up. So as you can see now, all I did is I added it to my account. And if I do log out and then log back in, let's try that. It's going to ask me to provide that code. So if I go ahead and put my code, which is in my phone, 384, and I'm in. You can reset the authentication app. So if you want to get rid of it, you can. You can reset the recovery code. However, this one, there's an issue that I'm yet working on, that you can reset the codes here, and then you can just copy these codes. That will, you can log in with this in case you lost access to the app. Like I said, that's something that I am also trying to complete. There's a little issue. And let me see. I'm not sure if there's any other options really we need to worry about. Yeah, I think it's pretty much all the settings because I already kind of preview. Oh, here you can allow user to remember their client. If you actually save that and log out and log back in, you'll see that in action. So you see it right now at the bottom where you can say, remember this 437. Remember the machine, and then I'm logged in. If I log out and log back in and log in, you notice it didn't prompt me again because I clicked save this machine. So that's really all into it. So everything really is in here in the user login, and you can control it. So I guess I decided not to bring in a new feature. I feel it's part of the user authentication, and if someone wants to enable it, they can easily enable it and disable it from here. That's it. Questions?
How close is that from the ASP.NET implementation?
Almost identical. I mean,
that's good.
Very close. I mean, I had to tweak a lot of it.
So you look at it.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I compared the logic for sure.
Questions also. Why enable two-factor authentication for admins?
You know, if you just want to enable it for administrators only because it's such a sensitive role.
But why admins? No, admins is just a logical role. It could be anything. So why not just say enable two-factor authentication for these roles, and you check which roles, because maybe you just want it for your editors because you don't trust them.
Yeah, we can.
Or
do
for
that.
Sipke because you don't trust him. You know, that I think that would be more orchardy to just say select the roles for which ones you want to enable it, if not all users. Okay, and then maybe you have a checkbox which is called all users, and then if you uncheck, you can select the roles, something like that. Because if you don't want all users, maybe you have to say, so which users? Then these roles. Okay, so maybe then in this case, you can have it like enable two-factor authentication, and when you check it, then you have all the other options that appear. We have lots of examples like that, right? So when you say, I want two-factor authentication, then you show, okay, all users, custom users, and then all these other options like allow users to remember client and so on, but just conditionally displayed.
Yeah, so I mean, you're saying instead of having it for admin here, just have a checkbox with roles that you can select from, and then you can pick and choose whichever role you want to prevent. So that way
Yes.
it's not for all users. I'm
But
with you.
the thing I just said was about the first option, enable two-factor. Well, sorry, not the first option. Another option which is called enable two-factor authentication. Done. When you click, you show all these properties here that you have. Okay, so you don't show everything unless you want to enable two-factor authentication. And then when you show everything, you can show all users or roles. Remember client, authenticator app, and so on. So we need a new section here.
Toggle, you mean just to toggle the options.
The toggle
Gotcha.
for enabling, yeah. So it just hides all these details that we might not care if we don't care about two-factor. So I understand from the UI that token length is something that is very common, like 8 or 10, and that's it. Or not 6, I don't know.
6 or 8.
6 or 8.
As far as I know. I think that's a requirement. I think that's just the known.
That's the thing you type from the Authenticator app. Number of digits. Okay.
Yeah, it's a digit parameter that you send to the authentication app. You send either 6 or 8 as far as I'm.
Oh, I see. But you could send different number.
No, I don't think so. I think you can only do 6 or 8. Those are the two known length that you can use. That's why it's a drop-down menu and not a number box.
That seems weird. Okay. Number of recovery code. Okay. The next comment is you might actually want to make it a feature in case you want to prevent existing sites to have the feature enabled, and that could trigger some locking some users if there is a security issue in an endpoint. That might be a risk actually.
I mean, you can just disable, right? You can disable it, and then even if you're even if I have my two-factor authentication enabled and I disable it, that's
fine. Okay, fine. As long as there is a way to say the same the thing I said, which is enabling two-factor auth. Okay. Then comment about the UI. I think that anything that should be done by any user should be on the front end and not on the admin. So when you said configure my two-factor on the top right link, you went into an admin page, and I think it should be on a front-end page.
Well, so it's actually split. So the admin function, like going down here, and this is all in admin, right? But then if you're logging in, if you log into the page, it follows your sign in. So if you go in here and you say use site theme for login page, then it will change the front end, like the providing the code will follow the same setting as used here.
Even without use site theme for login page. I see. So today we don't use a site theme for login page by default?
No,
I see.
it's a setting.
Okay.
So I followed the same thing. So if you check it here during the login and it's prompting you to provide your PIN, it follows this setting. But then, this functionality of managing the two-factor authentication for the user, it uses admin.
Okay. And I assume the front end is customizable with a shape or theme page. I don't know.
It's the same, same as the login.
Okay, so we can customize it. Okay.
Yeah, it's just a view. You can override any view you want.
Yeah. Cool. I think you should. This page can't be uglier than that. I'm sure it can be uglier, but it can definitely be nicer than that to understand what it does. You should look into GitHub what they provide as a UI by default when you enable that. I don't remember what options they provide and how they organize that. Or documentation, like, because I don't know what it means. it means something to you because you're in the code. Like, okay, forget this browser because probably you said remember this browser. Okay.
Right.
I'm like, okay, reset recovery codes. Okay, and I'm like, is it risky? Is it not risky? It's a blue button. Should it be a red button? Can I do bad things with that? What is a recovery code? I don't know.
Well, these if you hit here, so it'll take you to this page that makes a button in red telling you that, hey, watch out. Right here, there's no harm, no foul. All you're doing is setting up another app to obtain
nice,
tokens. Really, there's there's not. I mean, yes, I don't like. It's not very nice, but
that's what I'm saying.
it.
Just look at what GitHub does. I believe the screen with the QR code you took it from ASP.NET seems familiar to me.
Yep.
But otherwise, look at GitHub. I know that GitHub has two-factor authentication that is not mandatory, so you can disable it and enable it to see how it looks like, the flow and everything.
Yeah.
My suggestion would be like, if it looks like GitHub, you can't go bad because there are so many users and nobody's complaining about it. That must be good. Okay, that's great. That's awesome. Okay, that would be useful.
Yep. I'll put a PR once it's all done.
So thank you. And there is a new dependency on things or not?
Nope, nothing.
Okay, just ASP.NET. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Silke, what is Elsa? Is Elsa copyright Orchard community?
That's right. So Elsa is it's pirated through from Orchard Core's Workflows module, and it's true. It has its roots from that particular module.
You need to take every piece of Orchard and make it a separate product. I'm sure we have other things to extract,
like content management, like forms, like authentication, but that's already done. There's OpenID Connect, and there's OpenEdict.
Oh yeah, they've made some product based on Orchard with OpenID, like you can manage your users and your applications, your endpoints and everything, and you have an OpenID server using Orchard, custom recipe and everything. They've done that. It's
really?
like identity, like identity server, but using an Orchard recipe.
And is it using OpenEdict, or I don't know if that's the correct pronunciation?
OpenID, and Kevin helped implement that. I don't
That's
remember
great.
who worked on the feature at first. Maybe Antoine remembers. Michael worked on that. A friend from Sotiris in Greece. People have done that.
Well, it makes sense. I at the very beginning I did consider, maybe it should be just an improved version of Workflow Core, but it was born from a requirement of a project where they didn't want to base it on Orchard Core for whatever reason. But they did want to have workflows. Ultimately, there wasn't any budget to recreate workflow, so they went with Windows Workflow Foundation. But I couldn't let it go. I really wanted to extract it and make it reusable for the next project that would come along, and then I would have a solution for this for whatever new client would come with this requirement. But so that's what when I started to start extracting the code from Orchard Core, which was a lot of fun to do, and that was Elsa 1. It looked a lot like workflow, the workflows module in Orchard. It was using JS Plumb, same workflow runner, same APIs. The main difference was that in Orchard, of course, you have drivers for displays, but in Elsa 1, it was implemented using Stencil, which is a web component generator. So
is that something you can? Oh, it's a front end thing.
Yeah, exactly. So if you wanted to, so my goal was to create a reusable designer so that you can rehost it in your own dashboard application. And Stencil.js, it allows you to, it has also template binding. So it's like React. So you have JSX. So then it's easy to create dynamically, dynamic HTML, if you will, without having to use Knockout or even before that jQuery. It's pretty cool. But what I found was that it's quite hard for non-front-end developers to extend the designer with custom controls and things like that. So of course, a lot can be done with documentation, but what's really missing is a proper design system, or even just a UI framework like React, which has a big ecosystem of custom or controls that you can use, and that would make it easy to extend. But it works. It's just not finished yet, unfortunately. As a matter of fact, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but this also ties into the potential of backporting Elsa Designer into, or Elsa into Orchard Core. I did do some experiments with a custom Orchard Core module, and I'll show you in a second what it currently looks like. And it doesn't fit well without doing some significant more work in order to be able to fit it into it. So I'm actually wondering if this is the right approach, or if there might be a better one.
It feels like a separate product inside Orchard. So
yeah,
let's make
exactly.
it a separate product with bindings such that, yeah, you go into Elsa when you're in Orchard, you don't stay in Orchard. Like SQL Server, like already, right? It's a different service, and you go there to configure the thing. There's just helpers to communicate.
Exactly. So that will be an approach, and then you can choose whether you manage a external service, which is possible. But the Elsa library, it is built up in separate layers. So there's a core library that could be reused in Orchard in order to have deep integration with events like content items being published or deleted, or users logging in, so that you can have this deep integration within the same process. But it's really about the designer. What is the best approach there? And I'm more and more leaning towards just doing a dedicated implementation for Orchard Core, but using a modern UI framework like React. Could be Stencil too, but then you don't have the component libraries in order to do nice UIs like collapsible panels, for example. You would have to do a lot of those things. You would have to do yourself. Even with Elsa 3, there's a lot of these things that I had to do myself. Actually, I should show you.
So you're not using JS Plum anymore.
Who?
JS Plum. You're not using it.
No. So Elsa 1 was using. No, that's I didn't do. I found a replacement for JS Plum, which was Dagger D3 for Elsa 2. But the only thing it does, it performs an automatic layout using the Dagger algorithm, which works for simple sequential diagrams. But as soon as you start working with flowcharts with looping back, then it's not so great. So for Elsa 3, I'm using X6, which is looks like this. Actually, I'll open this thing here. So
it makes me super sad that I saw Antalar on your you should never use Antalar. I'm so sad.
I am considering replacing it with your.
Thank you. I'm not. I hope it's much more than just considering, because it's much better. But whatever. Sorry, go on.
No worries. Yeah, no, it's a good. It's a great tangent. So let's get into that later, because I discovered your library later after I already did a lot of work with Antler, and also I'm using Antler when I used it last year or so to create a custom DSL for Elsa, so that you can implement workflows in code as if you're writing JavaScript. Nice. So, for example, a for each construct in using this DSL would map to something like this. So here you have a for each. So this is an activity, right? But then it would map to this thing. So it would have syntax mapping to an actual workflow. So you can write long-running processes using JavaScript-like syntax. But anyway, that's a separate thing. But this designer here, it's X6, and it's beautiful because it has all of the it has enough granularity that you can configure a lot, but it's not too granular, where you do have to do a lot of work to create a designer or a graph editor. And that was a little bit a problem with with D3 library. It's a graphics library, but it was too granular for what I was looking for. But this is actually good. It has panning and of course zoom in and zoom out, selection and copy paste, all of those things. So that's that was very helpful. So no, I didn't do it myself. This is just a good library, and then I would recommend using it also for the Orchard course workflow enhancements. You could even use the same engine, but then use this library, and it's also because then you if you use Stencil or React, or it doesn't matter, then it's more of a SPA. So you don't have to have separate pages. Everything is in the same screen, which makes state management much easier, right? Because now you have everything on the same page in memory. And here for this design, I chose to do a property panel so that you can do quick editing of activity settings like this. And here there's the workflow properties like the name, variables. So it's quite it has advanced a lot since Elsa 1, where you would have activity input and output. But here you also have variables more akin to Windows Workflow Foundation, where you can configure the type. And these map to .NET types, and you can configure the available types that you want to expose in your workflow server. But so let me just walk you briefly through this simple hello world, because it shows a couple of interesting aspects. Of course, the activity picker here, which is very similar to Orchard Core, but there in that version you have it on the right hand side, and you can just drag and drop stuff onto it. Elsa 2, by the way, doesn't have this drag and drop, which makes me sad. Settings are here. I'm not too happy with the bottom panel because it's a little bit small in terms of work space. But yeah. So let me just walk you through this example. So here I have an HTTP endpoint, which turns your workflow into an API endpoint, just like you can do in Orchard. You configure a path. You can mark it as requiring authorization, which is very similar as if you were creating a custom controller and annotating it with the authorized attribute. So then it becomes protected, and you can optionally provide a policy name that then gets evaluated. So right now it allows anonymous requests. And here you can capture the output. So imagine you are sending a JSON request to this endpoint. So here I prepared one. So this represents a post request that I'm about to send to this workflow with a JSON body, right? And then you can capture this body into a variable that you declare here. So on the workflow level, you can declare a bunch of variables. Here I created one of type object, which will translate to an expand object under the covers. So it's going to be a dynamic object. And because here I capture the output into this variable, I can use it in this one here. So here I have the write HTTP response activity, which writes directly back to the HTTP response. So very similar to the one you have in Orchard Core. Check this out. So I'll just show the IntelliSense. So I can say return get payloads. So all of these variables here appear also as in the IntelliSense engine. And this, by the way, is using Gint, which is a pretty cool library. I highly recommend it. And methods, of course, because this is typed object, you don't have any IntelliSense on this type here. But if you wanted to, you could totally create a class in .NET registered with the engine. So this could be a customer, for example, and then it uses reflection, and it generates type definition, a type definition file that gets downloaded by this Monaco editor, and then you would also have proper IntelliSense on your .NET type here. This is pretty cool. But for now, we'll keep it simple like this, and then if you publish this one, and of course you've already seen it working here, but let's run it again. So now we executed this workflow. So a lot of aspects you probably recognize, right? We have a workflow definition, you have workflow instances to inspect the execution of a workflow instance. This UI is not finished, by the way, it's pretty recent, but it shows you a journal of the activities that executed. Yeah, and as I mentioned, the big difference, maybe the biggest difference is the way you create custom activities in Elsa. In Elsa, you just create a class and its input properties. So in the case of HTTP endpoint, it has a path property, for example, but then you don't have to create a driver to create the UI for the input. You just annotate it with some attribute. By default, it infers the UI based on the data type of the property, but you can then customize it using attributes. So, for example, so here, for example, the input type is of type object, and this defaults to, well, actually I don't know what this defaults to, but apparently the just the text area, I guess. Let me see. But if it's a string, then it defaults to a single line. That was my point. But this one is content. So I don't know. I don't know how it could be so smart that it knows to display the default. The default is just a single line as well. So that's the default. And then here you can switch between syntaxes, which is, you know, directly taken from Orchard. So yeah, so this is version 3. This is completely different from version 2, which I can show you just for a couple of seconds. Maybe this one.
It's using Orchard core. There is 2FA.
Yeah, maybe. So this is 2.8. Well, it's actually a later version, but this dashboard is out of date. But here, this is also more of a dashboard experience. So in Elsa 3, this one, it's not really a dashboard. It's just really a big designer and a toolbar that's optional just to get you started quickly. So you can quickly do publish and export, import, and browse workflow definitions. But it's not really intended to be extendable because I wanted to do a separate integration or actually a separate dashboard project, and also integration with frameworks like Orchard, ABP, and maybe others. But I'm still trying to find a good unit, if you will, that can be shared. And I talked about Stencil, but it doesn't have a design library or component library like the React ecosystem. So now I'm gonna experiment with Ionic, which allows you to create cross-platform applications using the material design system with proper implementations and potential integrations with Angular and Vue and React. And this is key. It's one of the goals for the designers that it's reusable in your own project, regardless of the UI framework that you're using. And that could be also potentially interesting to then embed in Orchard because, well, let's get into Orchard right after I show you this example here. So here's an example of a workflow. And this is, so again, this is work Elsa 2. And as I mentioned, it uses Dagger D3. and it uses an automatic layout. So you cannot position these activities, which on the one hand is advantageous because you can't easily make a mess, but it can get pretty big, and these activities are very large, and you can't do multi-select and then copy paste, because then it's just going to end up at the root here. So there's a lot of quirks with this designer. At first sight it looks nice, but once you start to work with it, you'll run into those limitations. But talking about Orchard here, so here I created an initial module, and I wanted to, the first thing I want you to do is to be able to declare the service. I don't have access. What? Did somebody change the 2FA on me? All right, and we're back. So as I was saying, one of the things that I thought would be nice is to be able to use Orchard, even if just as a client to an external Elsa server. So here you can add remote workflow service by just providing the root URL. And then depending on the settings here and depending on the feature that you enabled. So there's remote workflows that allows you to define those remote URLs. And then there's this feature here so that your Orchard tenant itself becomes a workflow server. And this is the Orchard process as a workflow server here. And this should then also provide activities that relate to content management and other aspects of the system. And these allow you to edit the workflows from the remote server. So for example, here, this is connected to the same one that this one is connected to. And to be clear, this is a SPA, so it's completely decoupled from the backend server. So here we have the same. A couple of things you'll notice is the UI is a bit off, and that's because of the bootstrap or whatever CSS is bleeding into this component. It's not using the DOM shadow, which would be a great improvement to do, because then it's completely isolated. But it's also very tricky to get right because of other components like Monaco editor. If it by default, as far as I know, it depends on the light DOM. So you would have to do some hacks for this component to also access the shadow DOM. So that's a potential issue. And other than that, as you can see, I just embedded the entire thing, including the toolbar, which may not be desirable. Maybe you just want this without a toolbar and have a more natural UI that more naturally fits within Orchard. So for that reason, I'm exploring, or that's part of the reasons I'm exploring different options to provide a reusable, if that's even possible, a component. Or maybe I'll bite the bullet and do a tailor-made designer for Orchard and a tailor-made designer for other frameworks, maybe. But so I think that's the biggest challenge. Other things like, Orchard or Elsa 3 uses fast endpoints library to expose a REST API, and it seems to work well. I didn't see any issues when I installed the fast endpoints into Orchard's pipeline, but I don't know how it will behave with multi-tenancy. So that's something to try out first. But worst case, it's easy to just create a custom set of controllers in the Orchard core module, and then make the controller logic reusable through mediator handlers, for example. So that's going to be solved. Another advantage of doing a tailor-made designer would be being able to reuse the Monaco editor that already comes with Orchard, and not running into conflicting versions or different configurations. And I think it might work, although as I can see here, there's some JavaScript error preventing me to switch tabs. Could also be due to a recent change. Sometimes I break things, but yeah, there's some caveats to or some challenges to fit it in. But once that's figured out, the backend side of things should be very easy. But of course, you have to consider what to do with the existing workflow module, because that's native to Orchard, and taking on an external dependency on some other library could be advantageous because it's used by a lot more people than who are not using Orchard. So it's a big group using workflow specifically, which means ideally that it's well maintained, and because it's used so much, there's also issues that are bound to be found early on. But it's also a bit of a risk potentially that you take on a different, because it's such a core component, right, of Orchard. So it's something to consider. I think a better strategy, at least short term, would be to add it as an external module, like I'm trying here. But as you see, there's a couple of components that would have to be remade, I think. But then the question is, how do you integrate this external module with events like coming from content, which might be easy because that's also quite a core module. So it would be okay probably for the workflow, for Elsa workflow module to take on a dependency on Orchard.contents. But what about some of the other features, like, let's see what we have. Media might be okay, but the important point is that this module would potentially take on a lot of Orchard dependencies in order to provide activities that, you know, represent events happening from various modules or tasks that you want to invoke. But maybe that's not a big issue. It's just something to be aware of. And that might be a good first phase to go through. And then as it gets used, and maybe down the road, it could replace Orchard Core's workflow, with a big caveat there. Of course, if you have existing workflows, those would have to be migrated manually. But that's really that's not here. Not going to be an issue anytime soon. I don't think.
You have to be able to speak Chinese to use exit.
No, I thought so initially too, but fortunately, the browser helps a lot. But it is indeed it is a Chinese library, and that was very challenging before I figured out that the browser actually could translate it. For some reason, I couldn't get it to translate, but then at some point it just started to work. Fortunately, because there's somebody who started actually to create a translation using Google Translate. But as you can see, it's able to translate it quite well. So it is a little bit of a challenge to go through the documentation sometimes, but most of the time it's okay. And check out the gallery; it's pretty cool, like this one.
Yeah, I played with the workflow one.
This one, flowchart. Yeah, so it's a quite flexible library. And that's these cool animations. This would be cool to. So what I want to do for Elsa 3 is be able to allow the user to press a play button to actually execute the workflow, and then using these animations to make it really come alive.
That would be huge.
Right, yeah, and then also being able to inspect the state at real time, maybe even pause it using a breakpoint. That Workflow Foundation has it, and then you can inspect its current state on some panel, for example.
Yeah, or even simulate it so you can kind of project what it will do, but without committing.
Oh, so for example, if the activity would have a side effect, like invoking an API that you can not.
I just want to see the outcome. You know, what will it do? Will it create a bunch of items? Will it not? I think it, you know, it would be helpful.
Yeah, so being able to provide outcome or output without having the side effects of whatever it's doing internally.
I mean, it's the same thing when you just mentioned how you're going to step through it, right, to see if there's error. You're kind of simulating it, right? You're just saying what will happen if this happens, but you're not really, like, if the task was to update existing item in the database, you're not really updating it. You're just saying, hey, it worked or it failed, right? So it's kind of the same thing. Like, how else would you simulate it right now to know if it's going to pass or not? Right?
It will not. The idea was just to pause it and then not to simulate it, but just to pause and say wait, and then go on and to the next one and stop after the next one, and that's it. Not say do it for fake. Like, we don't have the notion of fake activity, fake execute in the workflow. Today there is execute async, but you could have fake execute. Okay, like
exactly.
And then you return true false, like, or random, like, just to test your workflows maybe. But that's you need to change the workflow engine to support that now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so the idea is indeed to actually execute the workflow, maybe providing some fake input, because some workflows may have external dependencies in terms of input. You would have to provide those inputs. Also, if you wanted to support executing activities individually, like retool seems to. Are you guys familiar with retool? So they have this little play button here, so you can actually execute an individual activity, but that potentially requires you to also provide at least some default input or some test input. But that kind of tooling I want to first do in this new project. This is called the Elsa Studio. It's a Blazor project. So it's a dashboarding thing, which makes it more convenient and more extensible for users to add their own modules, but also take advantage of the component libraries out there that are built for Blazor. Like this is based on mud Blazor, which is just a component library built for Blazor, which is pretty cool. It implements the material design system, and here they have a whole host of components, and that makes it super easy to do things like here. If I go to here, for example, there's these splitter panels. So I implemented splitter panels in Elsa for using stencil, like here, but it's very crude and it's not reusable, and it took me a bit of work, and I can't reuse it. So that's one example of why using a component library is mighty productive. I was able to do all of these in maybe 3 days. It's not completely functional, by the way. It's I'm still working on that, but this is another X6 implementation, but in Blazor, and it works pretty cool. Here I'm building an option to switch between environments. So similar to what I showed here in Orchard, where you can switch between environments. Here you're gonna be able to do it here, and then also deploy to one of these environments if you want to. So you could work on something on your local, and then publish it to production if you're brave.
It's funny how this is the opposite way around, but you get to the same point, like environments instead of tenants, or deploy, publish instead of our deployment, remote deployment, store, restore and save stuff, recipes, and let me extend it with components. And but you start from scratch and you implement the things,
In Orchard, we have all the things, and you implement the workflow. That's the opposite. And you reuse export.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or we need
fun.
authentication, and I need users to be able to access the workflows, and
Exactly.
I need roles because some people can just start a workflow, some other can change the definition, and then
Yeah, and for that reason, for a very long time, I was thinking, I would just want to use Orchard because it has all of these things.
that you have to say it's Orchard now.
Yeah, but the big difference being is this is using Blazor, so this is completely SPA and decoupled from the backend. But that's the only thing I can say about it. What's different. But in terms of functionality, you're absolutely right. It's going to have user management, role management. It's going to be modular, so there's going to be a little ecosystem of functionality that people can use, just like Orchard. And it does make one wonder what's the point of doing it from scratch versus using Orchard core.
It's like you implement something, you want to go to 100% of the feature, but it's easy to go to 99%. But the last percent, you're like, I can't do the last percent with this solution. So I have to do it from scratch just for this 1 extra percent. Because Orchard didn't provide you the extra 1%, whatever percentage it is, but you hit a wall at some point with Orchard, and you're like, I can't do that. It's not supported. And I need to be able to change that. How do I do that? And you're like, no, you can't. So, okay, so I will have to develop my own solution, even if it means re-implementing everything from Orchard, because I can't do the last 1% with Orchard, and I need it. That's the issue.
Yeah, I think you're right.
All the frameworks are the same. It's beautiful until you reach the limit of the framework, and you're like, I need a different framework, or I need to build my own for my own needs because I didn't think about it when I started. That's same for everything. That's why everyone is building their own CMS. Everyone is building their own ORM or whatever. Yeah. And then their own workflow engine and so on. Because they are all different. Oh, I need something that is not supported by the other one.
Yeah, that's very true for Elsa. And for Elsa, it was mostly because it needed to be not dependent on the Orchard core framework. It needed to be able to fit into any application framework. And so actually Elsa is also implemented as a module in ABP framework, which is conceptually, I think, similar to Orchard core. It's a modular ASP.NET Core application framework, and they took Elsa and used it as their workflow engine. So yeah, this is where I'm at currently.
Yeah. Oh, we are over time. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah. Awesome. Good luck. That. And nice to see you again.
Likewise, it's great to see you guys. Some of you I don't know, but it's good to see old faces or old names in this.
Everyone here. Mike is a newcomer. Okay. So thanks everyone. See you on Thursday or next week.
Thank you.
At the next meeting. Bye bye. Thanks again, Sika.
Bye guys.
Bye.
Take care. Bye bye.